Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, July 31st, 7:41 a.m. I'm about to have lunch. 'Cause I have been up since 4 a.m. every day this week, even on Saturday. Tomorrow I'll attempt to sleep in, but I doubt that. 6 days a week we should work and have the Sabbath day off, right? So Sundays I do take off. I have to force myself to. So today I want to talk about something that has been going on in my life in relation to demonic oppression or demonic interference in relation to the workplace. I think a lot of times we forget that demons can interfere with our jobs, our vocation, or just our normal, 9 to 5 job for many reasons. And obviously, a normal 9 to 5 job is part of our vocation, especially if you have a family and that's how you provide for your family. And obviously, this is good and this is what God wants us to do. So Satan interferes with it. I'm in a unique position with my line of work. And I'm not going to refer to it as a job. For me, it truly is a vocation. It was something that I was called to do. It was something that I prayed about. So 5 years ago, my world kind of changed overnight. I left Wyoming, where I was living, due to a bad situation. And literally within 2 days, I was in South Carolina, closer to my family, and had to completely start over with nothing. So to me, I looked at it as an opportunity to say, okay, Lord, I don't know why this is happening, but I have faith that, this is part of your plan. And what should I do? I had no job leads. I had done a variety of things in my background, including law enforcement, obviously the military law enforcement route. I was a dog groomer at one time. And then my most recent job was working for a nonprofit called Volunteers of America. And we had done administrated a grant to house homeless veterans. And that grant actually is nationwide. So it was ironic because the program that I was working, I ended up needing. So when I got here to South Carolina, I went to the nonprofit responsible for administering that, and they helped me be able to have stable housing because I had nothing. And I applied for a job with them. They weren't hiring. So that was disappointing. So I really had no idea what I was going to do. I had job offers to go back to the police department that I had left because that was in South Carolina. But it was like 3.5 hours from my dad, and I would have had to go back through the police academy and all kinds of stuff that I was just not able to do as a single mom. So I was really pretty lost. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I had a degree in business. I was always, self-employed mindset. I'm not a 9 to 5er by any means. I got a job, just the first job I could get was a bartender. That was not for me. So come to find out, I didn't last there very long. And so finally I just asked the Lord, like, what is it that you want me to do? And I started pondering my strengths. Everybody has different gifts given to them and different talents given to them at birth, given to them from the Creator. In all different levels. Not everybody's gifts are the same, but like the parable of the talents, we have to use our gifts that are given to us to the max. So I was pondering, and I'm like, well, I've always had insights that other people do not have. So I knew I needed to do something with those gifts. What could I possibly do? Again, I kept going back to law enforcement and being a detective and all that. But it was just the door, the door wasn't going to be able to open on that because of my state in life as a single mom. So I was kind of frustrated there for a while. And then it kind of just came to me out of nowhere. I'm like, well, what if I work for myself, use my business degree, use my military and law enforcement background and these gifts of seeing things that other people don't, and use it to work for myself as a private investigator. Like, I don't even think I knew what a private investigator really was at that time. I think maybe I had seen a TV show or a documentary, at one point, but it's not something that had ever crossed my mind before. It came after a lot of praying. So I was like, all right. So I started Googling private investigators in the area, and there was a couple places. Nobody would answer my phone call or my emails. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just go into some of these places. And the only office that I could find, was I come to find out, I think most of them work out of their house, was also a security company. So I walked in, and they were like hiring for bike week security, and I had the background to do security, so I was like, okay, maybe that's just what I'm supposed to be doing. So I didn't even ask about, the private investigator thing. I just took the job in security. And literally, as I was sitting in the office, I had filled out my application, and then I was waiting for something, and I was sitting there talking to the secretary, and the owner came in, and he was like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I just applied for, I'm filling out the sled paperwork for bike week for a job. Just moved here, don't have anything. And he's like, oh, have you been interviewed yet? And I was like, no. And he's like, did you ever think about being a PI? And I was like, yeah, actually, it's funny you say that. That's initially why I came in here. And he's like, all right, I don't have anyone right now, and I have all this stuff going on. So he literally gave me the application, filled it out, before I even got a formal interview, anything like that. And I was hired as a private investigator. Worked for him for about a year, and I told him up front, I was like, hey, I want to work for myself. That's the end goal here. And so he was fine with that. I worked for him for about a year, and I really didn't need to be mentored, not tooting my own horn, but it was just a natural fit for me. I did really well. I ended up running pretty much his investigative side of things for a year, and then some things happened in my life, and the scheduling was just too much because it was mostly nights and weekends, and I didn't have adequate childcare and stuff like that. So I ended up quitting, and my goal was, I was kind of discouraged by the scheduling conflicts that I was facing. So I quit, and I opened up my own business. Just serving papers was going to be my thing. I was just going to serve papers, and maybe come back, revisit the PI thing when my kids were older. There was no way for me to open my own PI company business at the time, because I didn't have 3 years of experience, which was needed. So I was like, I don't know. I guess if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So I started going into all these law firms to market my process serving business. And I swear, every single, and I have witnesses, there's my dad's wife, my stepmom, was coming with me because she helped me, and she serves papers for me as well. And we went into these law offices, and literally every single one was like, are you a private investigator? I need an investigator. One attorney was like, okay, I gave him my information. He's like, I'm going to file this in my cabinet under private investigator. And I was like, but I'm not. Like, I'm just a process server. And it was a repeat. I mean, this must have happened 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. So she looked at me, and she's like, I think you need to figure out how to work for yourself as a private investigator. So that's what we did. Ended up finding a weird loophole with the regulations, and had somebody from out of state hold the business license for me for the next 2.5 years. I paid him 15% of my profits for the next 2 years to hold my business license, and I basically worked for myself with him holding the license. It was so strange. He was out of state. He had nothing to do with my business. He was just nice enough to help me out, and obviously I paid him to do so. So there was that. So that was kind of how, when God wants you to do something, even as impossible as it seems, he is going to work it out for you. So here I am now, fully, licensed. My business is fully licensed under myself, and I do mostly domestics. Domestics meaning child custody and adultery cases. So in the state of South Carolina, we are an at-fault state. What does that mean? It means anytime somebody is going through a divorce, things do not get split 50-50 here. If you are the party that is at fault, and there's certain criteria, including adultery, if you're committing adultery, you lose in court. So you pretty much, you either have to pay or you get nothing, whichever way it's going. But you're considered at fault, and the judgment, the final outcome is not in your favor. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of money in adultery investigations because there's a lot of alimony on the line. There's a lot of times there's houses on the line, assets, things like that. So I tried for the last, I don't know how many years, to stop doing domestic investigations. But they just keep coming my way, and they seem to come my way when I'm, need the money the most. So I keep taking them. So over the last couple months to a year or so, I've since changed my view on them. It takes a special person to carry that burden of constantly watching marriages disintegrate, constantly watching bad parents do bad things. It's a lot. And, people are always like, well, aren't you scared of, retaliation? Isn't it dangerous? And it's funny because yes and no. I'm not scared of retaliation from the living. I'm scared of retaliation from the demonic influences that are influencing these people. And I'm going to go over, I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to go over in this video what exactly I mean by that and what I'm facing right now. Because anytime you put yourself in the middle of something where there's some serious, where Satan has a stronghold on individuals, and you put yourself in the middle of that as a outside force that is trying to bring those actions to the light, there's a little bit of retaliation from the demonic that comes along with that, let me tell you. So I'll just go over what I'm working on right now. Right now I'm working on a case, and I had initially turned this case down. I wasn't interested. I was like, no, I have a lot going on. I'm not getting involved, because she had come to me needing, initially it was for the adultery aspect of it. So I turned it down. She went somewhere else. She hired a private investigator, another one, who has since then died of a rare cancer. So he caught them cheating. So the divorce is in the works. It just takes a long time. And then he had died of a rare cancer, and now they're obviously living separate. Her husband is living, he just bought a house, another house, and he's living with the paramour, or the girlfriend. So she calls me and she's like, well, here's the situation. Now I need documentation that they're violating the temporary child custody agreement. They have 3 kids. And I'm like, okay. So this was a couple months ago. She caught me at a good time. I was looking over my numbers. I had took such a hit from COVID that I was like, I can't turn anything down. Like, I have to take everything that comes my way. So I was like in the stage of saying yes to everything and completely overloading myself. Anyway, so I was like, okay, I'll do it. So come to find out, this is just a horrible situation. The girlfriend is like 10 years younger than this couple. They have 3 beautiful kids, beautiful family. I actually knew them prior. They helped me out with something. Ironically, I was looking for someone and they had information. Anyway, so they knew me prior, whatever. Beautiful family. And I always got the impression, wow, like, he's successful. He's a successful businessman, makes a ton of money. And they just, gave off the impression that they were the all-American successful family, had everything together and things like that. Well, come to find out, he gets a motorcycle and starts going to this bar. He meets a bartender, and they end up having an affair. Sad, right? Just horribly sad. So he kind of snaps to and is like, wow, he gets called on it. I think the wife finds out, my client. He gets called on it, and he's like, you know what? I love my wife. I love my family. I want to try to work on my marriage. So he leaves the bartender, and he moves back into the marital home. And they're trying to work it out, but this bartender will not go away. She's just constantly harassing them, and she basically tells him, I'm never going away until I get what I want, and I want you. And I know all this because it's on text messages and all the whole 9 yards. So she basically harasses him, and instead of standing up for his family. He folds like a cheap card table. She harasses him to death pretty much into moving out. Obviously the marriage was having some problems because there's all these trust issues and things like that. So instead of doing the right thing, he again leaves his wife, moves back into the apartment they were living in, whatever. And then they buy this house. So this woman, I have just never really seen anything like this. The norm is people are involved in their passions. There's a lust problem, whatever the issue is. But for the most part, the home wrecker, we call it the paramour, but the home wrecker, there's usually some level of remorse. Like, I didn't want to break up your marriage. I'm sorry for you, but I love him or I love her. That's not what's happening here. This woman, this girl, I should say, is like legitimately proud of the fact that she wrecked this marriage. I mean, it's diabolical. She is proud of it. So now she has this house with him. They live together. And she is not allowed around the children as per the court order. Well, she's not going to listen to that. So the first couple times the kids went over the house, it didn't go well. She was there. It was awkward. She's not nice to the children. Even when she's not there, there's cameras all in the house pointing at the children, so she knows everything that's going on. And if she doesn't like something that's going on, she calls the father and fights with him about whatever. She makes these kids drink out of cups with her name on it. I mean, just really mental stuff. So when I picked up this case, the first day I watched, them, it was a Wednesday. She was supposed to leave the house because the kids were coming over from, 4 to 8 or whatever. So we're getting close to 4 o'clock and she's not leaving. And I'm like, this is bold. Like, seriously right now? So she leaves, but she walks down to the pool and she's sitting in the pool and the client calls me and she's like, okay, he just picked up the kids and, he said that they're going to go swimming. And I'm like, really? I'm like, she's sitting at the pool right now. Like, how bold. So that's what happens. They come home, with the kids, they go inside, they change, they go to the pool. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. Very rarely does anything happen right away in any case I work. So this was like, wow, this is terrible. So she's sitting kind of in the corner. So I'm like, well, how is it worded in the agreement? It says, and she's like, well, it says she can't be in their presence. And I'm like, well, she's at the same pool. I would consider that their presence, but obviously you need to talk to your attorney. She didn't interact with them. She literally sat on this lounge chair the whole time in her very small thong bathing suit, which is totally inappropriate, and just stared at these kids swimming. Like, it was the creepiest thing I think I have ever seen. And I finally called the client and I'm like, I'll be honest with you. Normally when I do child custody cases, it's, one parent just wants to get revenge on the other parent and they're using the kids as pawns. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not what you're doing. Like, I can tell you're a reasonable person. I was like, but I don't blame you one bit. Like, this is weird. Like, I've never, in all the years I've been doing this, I have never exactly witnessed what I just witnessed. Usually if you're going to break a custody agreement, you interact with the kids, So comes to find out she has a Pinterest board and she's pinning all this stuff about if your mom's not going to step up, I'll be the stepmom and all this stuff. And she's like inviting the kids to this board so they can see all these things. And it's just very, very strange. Like, there's a weird thing going on with life insurance. It's just diabolical. I don't know how any other way to say it except this woman is concerning. So, like, mentally abusive, just very concerning. So anyway, so that's what happened that night. So the plan was, we already have her in the present, so now we want to get the overnight because the kids are saying that she's sneaking in at night and they see her coming into the house at night. Now, they're constantly fighting, the girlfriend and the father. So the cops have already been there. It's just a very bad situation. So the kids are saying this, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll put cameras out. That's normally what we do. Hide some cameras and catch them going in and out. Simple enough, should be fairly straightforward. Except for the fact the last 3 weekends, including last night, that I have put my cameras out, they do not work. Now, these are pretty straightforward cameras. I have kind of one right here. It's just you turn it on, there's a switch, you put an SD card in the slot, turn it on, and it just continuously records. There's not much to it. There is an option that you can schedule certain times, whatever. I don't mess with that. I just continuous record so that there's no issues, right? Wrong. So the last 3 weekends, so I'm like, okay, I use these cameras. I constantly swap cameras out. I'm using these cameras on another job and they're working. So why are they not working in this specific area? And finally the client was like, well, do you think they're doing something to the cameras? And I was like, no, because it's pretty much impossible. Well, I pick the cameras up, I'll drop them off at 4 a.m. one morning, pick them up 4 a.m. the next morning, and they're still on and the SD card is in there. I'm like, so they can't do anything to them unless they're taking, the SD card out or turning the camera off. It's going to record. So it's not that somebody's physically doing something to it. So I'm like, really? So I ordered a new one. So yesterday, Friday morning, early in the morning, 3 a.m., I put the brand new one, brand new card, SD card, brand new camera, put it out. Maybe it was like 4 a.m., whatever. And they last about 24 hours. So put it out. The kids get there last night. I go back this morning at 5 a.m. Her car's in the driveway, like bold, right? So obviously she's there. The kids are overnight. I take a picture of her car. Now back up. Before I leave my house, when I leave my house, I step outside my door and this feeling of dread comes over me like I'm being stalked. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, all right, it's like early in the morning, like not fully caffeinated, whatever. But I step back inside and do my holy water because I have holy water by my door. And I get in my car and I'm just very uneasy. I'm like, something is weird. Drive over there. Now, this is a gated community, but it's new, so the gates typically aren't, closed because the construction workers are going in and out. Well, they were closed, so I park outside the neighborhood, walk in, and the whole time I'm walking, like I'm being stalked. Like I'm looking around for alligators because I just have this whole uneasy feeling like that there's something stalking me. So I just say a Hail Mary, and it was just bizarre. I've been there a couple times. I've never had this experience. And I go get my camera. Still very uneasy. Notice her truck in the driveway. Take a picture with my phone. Pick up my camera, switch it out, put the other one there, leave, get back to my car. The whole time I'm very uneasy. Get back home, I'm fine. Get back in my house, I'm fine. So I'm like, very strange. Let me look at this camera. Let me see what's going on. I pop the SD card in my card reader and it recorded for 3 hours. Brand new camera. So it recorded during like the early morning where the kids weren't even there. So there's nothing I could use. So I'm like, what? So now I'm like pissed. I'm like, this is insane. Like this lady is going to want her money back. Like I don't even know what to tell her at this point other than this has never happened to me where 3 weekends in a row my cameras just won't function. Like I don't even know what to tell this lady. So I'm like, this is crazy. And then I'm like thinking about like how I was feeling the whole time. And I'm like, I bet I'm experiencing some demonic oppression with these cameras. Some retaliation because obviously Satan and his demons have a stronghold on this couple who's living in adultery, who's living in sin. She obviously has some serious issues. She's obviously not a Christian, and there's a hold that Satan has on this couple, and I'm now interfering. So back up to a year ago when I decided I wasn't doing domestic investigations, the Lord very clearly told me that my purpose of observing this stuff is not only for court. It's not only on the natural. It's also so that I can pray for these individuals souls are in danger of being lost. And I'm very serious about that. So I've been praying for this couple. I've been praying for everyone involved. My client, this evil girlfriend, the dad who doesn't have the backbone to stand up for his family, and obviously the kids. And I'm constantly praying for all these people. I go to mass, I pray for them. So I know I'm probably facing some sort of retaliation because of that, because of my prayers. So now my cameras are just not working. So I come home, I'm like pissed. I look at my phone after I took the picture of the house, the house with the car in the driveway. I can't show it on here for privacy reasons, obviously, but there's these like right in front of the door of the house. It didn't interfere, luckily, with me getting the truck, but there's like a green disc. Like, I guess you can call it a light flare, whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, all these coincidences, the way I was feeling, my camera's malfunctioning, and now interference with the actual me taking a picture while I'm there in person leads me to believe that I'm experiencing some sort of oppression. So I frequently give my business to heaven. Like, I offer up my business to the Blessed Virgin, take my business, use it for what you will, my relationships, all that. And then it dawned on me that I have never really prayed about my equipment or my cameras. And I have the authority to, even though right now they're on property that's not mine, I have authority over my cameras because they are mine. That's my equipment. It's part of my business. So as I'm sitting here pissed off about this, I'm like, wait a minute, like maybe I should really attack this from a spiritual level, because at this point I honestly don't know what else to do. They work everywhere else except at this one location. It's not like it's a service issue where they're not getting data or whatever. It's a very simple mechanism that shouldn't be malfunctioning. So I'm like, maybe this is what I need to do. So I turned to my handy dandy deliverance prayers for the laity. And the first one I did was a binding prayer. Basically just a general binding any evil spirits that are coming against me. But then I found one that seems to be like it's going to be useful. Now, obviously, I don't know yet because the cameras that's there right now, I won't pick up till tomorrow. So I don't know. But I'm going to post this probably in the description. It is a little long though, so if it's not in the description, then it's going to be as a comment. And everyone should, I might even just post it to my webpage and put a link. We'll see. I'll let you know in the description box below. But I just want to briefly read it because, as Father Rittberger, the exorcist, says, the spirit world is very specific. So when you are praying against any kind of demonic influence, you have to be very specific as to the problem, and then you will receive the specific solution. So I've never heard of anything like this or seen anything like this, but it's the consecration of one's exterior goods to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it says this prayer is particularly useful for breaking various forms of oppression. So I'm pretty sure at this point I'm facing oppression in relation to surveillance equipment. So I don't know. That's probably a new one for exorcists. I was even considering maybe bringing my cameras to get blessed by my priest. We'll see. We'll see if we have to go that far. But it basically says, I, and then you enter your name, a faithless sinner, renew and ratify today in thy hands the vows of my baptism. I renounce forever Satan, his pomps and works, and I give myself entirely to Jesus Christ, the incarnate wisdom, to carry my cross after him all the days of my life and to be more faithful to him than I ever have before. In the presence of all the heavenly court, I choose thee, O Mary, this day for my mother and mistress, knowing that I have received rights over all my exterior goods by the promulgation of the natural law by the divine author. I deliver and consecrate to thee, as thy slave, all of my exterior goods, past, present, and future. I relinquish into thy hands, my heavenly mother, all rights over my exterior goods, including my health, finances, relationships, possessions, property, my job, and my earthly success. And then it says, in parentheses, add any exterior good being oppressed. So I added surveillance equipment, especially in relation to cameras. And I retain for myself no right of disposing the goods that come to me, but leave to thee the entire and full right of disposing of all that belongs to me, without exception, according to thy good pleasure, for the greater glory of God in time and in eternity. As I now interiorly relinquish what belongs to me exteriorly into thy hands, I entrust to thee the protection of those exterior goods against the evil one, so that knowing that they now belong to thee, he cannot touch them. Receive, O good and pious Virgin, this little offering of what little is in honor of and in union with that subjection which the eternal wisdom deemed to have to thy maternity, in homage to the power which both of you have over this poor sinner, and in thanksgiving for the privileges with which the Holy Trinity has favored thee. Trusting in the providential care of God the Father and thy maternal care, I have full confidence that thou wilt take care of me as to the necessities of this life and will not leave me forsaken. God the Father, increase my trust in thy Son's mother. Our Lady of Fair Love, give me perfect confidence in the providence of thy Son. Amen. So, pretty intense. And I will post a link somewhere to that. And I guess my point out of all this is that sometimes, especially in my line of work, insights can mean a couple different things. Yes, insights into the natural world, but everything we do, we also have to take into the spirit realm, if you will. Because there's usually God gives us gifts that manifest themselves in the natural, and that can be useful to things like practical use, like making a living, making money, feeding your family. But normally those gifts have a dual purpose. So in my case, yes, I receive insights that can help me, insights and inspirations that can help me catch a cheater or catch a bad parent. But I also receive those insights into the situation so that I can pray for the souls that are in danger of being lost, or that so I can recognize, hey, there's some demonic oppression here, and I can have the, seek out the tools to be able to combat that. And, lately what I'm realizing about my cases is that every case is a miniature opportunity to go to war spiritually and to fight for souls. Every case I have. Even my background checks, I do a lot of background checks. And, if I see something that's particularly alarming, like 25 charges and in and out of jail, I say a prayer for that person. So we have to, as Catholics, we have this responsibility. And I think a lot of times it's easy to forget that is our primary responsibility. The salvation of souls is our primary mission. Everything else is secondary. So all our gifts are oriented towards that. Now, obviously, not everybody has insights into demonic oppression. The Lord has literally put me in situations so I understand these things and I can recognize them. But some people have, gifts of, patience, kindness, gentleness. And their gifts are best used in serving people and in bringing joy to people. Obviously, I probably don't bring much joy to individuals that I come in contact with. I'm primarily the bearer of bad news in everything I do. But with that comes a different a different opportunity for charity, because I'm just able to see things that I can then take to the spirit realm, whereas another person hasn't had the same experiences as me and doesn't understand the same things, so they wouldn't be able to do that. And I was thinking, of all the investigators that I know in this area, they are all deeply religious. I'm the only Catholic I know, and I don't know, if they have as many insights into the spirit world or whatever as I have been given, but they're Protestant and they're, regular churchgoers and intimately understand Satan versus Jesus. Or maybe not intimately, but understand the basis of good versus evil and have chosen to follow Jesus to the best of their ability because they have seen so many things that it would make them foolish to choose otherwise, basically. So it's just the nature of it. And whatever gifts you have been given, occupationally or, vocationally, just remember there's a dual purpose for those gifts, and to always think about how can I use this gift not only to advance my, your little world here on earth, but to primarily advance the kingdom of God. And there's always a way, and if you don't know, just pray, and God will tell you. I have been incredibly slow to understand this, so thank you for the patience, Lord, but It's important. It's important to live up to our duties. It's important to use our gifts and not bury our talents. Like in the parable of the talents, be the one who multiplies your gifts, and how do we do that? By the salvation of souls primarily. So I hope you all have a great weekend. I will be working all day today, and then I will be having tomorrow off. So, and also pray for me. Pray for my cameras, that this demonic oppression against my technology and surveillance equipment comes to an end, because I don't know what's going to happen if I go to this lady empty-handed another weekend. I don't know. So I hope y'all have a great weekend. Joan of Arc Media out.